we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not sure if it's the light at the end of the tunnel or it's the next train coming to try to run us over. This movement and the resistance and the history of it, I knew that we will persevere and we will overcome. And then we understand that no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. We have to pay the price for it ourselves. To be able to sacrifice my life for the freedom of Iran, I think that would be like the greatest honor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Heartbreak podcast. My name is Daniel Lugo. I'm your host. And today I have the pleasure of having here Solval Habibi. And I hope I'm saying your name right. That's something that I ask every podcast because I just want to be sure that I'm bringing the guest and they feel welcome in the podcast. And, I think today's podcast is going to be amazing. I think you bring a lot of stories into the table that a lot of people are going to be impacted by. So, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and let me greet those who are tuning into the podcast today. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Zolal Habibi, as you just mentioned, and I am an activist with the Iranian Resistance. I am a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Um, I guess I belong to the generation that unfortunately has seen nothing but this regime in Iran, because I am from the generation that's born after the revolution. Um, but despite the fact I have never given up on the dream of a free Iran, a democratic Iran, and that is what we strive for and work for.
Perfect. I think you will bring a lot of things to the table, and right now, Iran is going through the war, and you know we can speak more about this later. But the first question I want to ask, I know that you have many stories, but is there a specific one when you felt you were at rock bottom that you didn't see the light of day?
Could you repeat that question again?
Yes. So I know you have a lot of stories, but is there a moment when you felt you were at rock bottom that you didn't see the light of day?
Well, I don't know if I could ever say rock bottom because I've always had hope, and there have been a lot of very difficult times, obstacles. There have been times that we felt like the world was, against us. But even despite that, because I had this movement and the resistance and the history of it, I knew that, we will persevere and we will overcome. Um, I came face to face with these realities, I guess, in life from very early on. Maybe the first time would be, I guess, when my father was killed by the regime. I was 7 at the time, and to me, uh, well, I was daddy's little girl, so I was very, had a very close connection with my dad, and so losing my father was very difficult for me. But even then, I understood that my father hadn't given his life in vain, and I understood that there are so many others who had a more difficult situation than what we did. Even then, I still considered myself to be one of the lucky ones, because I actually had the chance to be with my dad till the age of 7. I didn't have to live under those difficult circumstances that others had to live in Iran. I knew kids who were my age who had been taken to prison with their parents, or they had to watch their parents be tortured and things of that nature. And I understood that, because of the fact that I've actually never had the chance to actually visit Iran. I was born and raised abroad. I was born and raised in the US. I was living in a democracy, even if my people were suffering the way they were in Iran. So that was the first time. But throughout the years, I think probably one of the most difficult years for me was 2003. And that was when the Iranian resistance main headquarters were targeted, in a, I guess, as part of the policy of appeasement toward the Iranian regime, both at the start of the Second Gulf War, but also on the European front of it. So those were very, very difficult times press, and like one of our friends would joke around and said, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not sure if it's the light at the end of the tunnel or it's the next train coming to try to run us over. And that's how it felt. And I think after that, maybe like 2009, during the uprisings in Iran, when the uh, base of the Iranian resistance was attacked simultaneously with the uprisings in Iran, that people were being killed in the streets. The resistance was also attacked in Iraq at that time, and I actually had friends who were killed, and it really hit close to home for me because there was you felt like your hands were tied, but both your people inside of the country and the resistance, they were being brutalized and killed. And but at that time, we also saw how we were able to join forces and be able to prevail in face of all the odds and to be able to persevere. And I think that was a lesson learned for me, especially with the rest of the obstacles that we faced over the years after that, because I saw the power that we have in shifting not only you know the situation in Iran, but also the international arena and the policies of the countries in regards to what is happening in Iran and to the people of Iran. Um, those are the ones that come to mind. But also, I think this year has been a very critical year. It started in January with uprisings in Iran. Thousands of people were killed on the streets, many of them, you know, in their late teens, early 20s, were killed by the regime at point blank in the streets. Um, but the people of Iran showed their will, that they want to have this regime overthrown, and they're willing to pay the price for it. And then we understand that no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. We have to pay the price for it ourselves, and that is what we have always stated. Um, but after that massacre and that bloodshed that was created by the regime, the people of Iran still continued. They turned everything that they came face to face with to a force of resisting and, um, standing in face of this regime, be it from mourning ceremonies that they held for their loved ones who had been lost, turning those ceremonies into memorial services, I guess, honoring the lives of those who had been killed, but also making a pledge with them to continue this fight till the fall of the regime. And unfortunately, today, as you mentioned, is day 32 of the war on Iran. Over 22 years ago, our resistance, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, and its president-elect, Mayam Rajabi, has stated that the solution to Iran is neither war nor appeasement, but policy of appeasement will lead to a war. And war is never going to be the final solution, because at the end of the day, it's the Iranian people who have to bring about change and have to overthrow this regime in its entirety. Freedom can't be installed. A democracy can't be installed in the country. It has to come from the people. So they have to be able to take their destiny into their own hands. And that is what the people of Iran have been um, working towards and striving for decades now. But unfortunately, until now, the policy of appeasement has been the main obstacle and barrier in their path. But today, this price that they're paying continues. Just in the past 2 days, unfortunately, yesterday morning, we woke up to the news of 2 political prisoners being executed in Iran, on the charges of being members of the Iranian resistance and for plotting for the overthrow of this regime. And also today, this morning, 2 others were executed. Yesterday we had, I have their pictures I could show you here. One is Muhammad Taqavi. He was first arrested by the regime at the age of 17. He was only 12 when the revolution happened in Iran, but he was arrested. He spent 3 years in prison at that time. He was one of the sole survivors of the 1988 massacre. And then he was rearrested in 2020 and was in prison for another 3 years. And then in 2024, he was arrested again, and he had been in prison for nearly 2 years now, and he was executed um, at the age of 59 yesterday. And the other was Ali Akbar Danishvarkar, and he was also executed yesterday. He was a engineer, and he was a father, and he has also been executed. This morning we had the execution of Babak Alipur. He was 34 years old, and he was um, I guess he was a lawyer. He had studied law, and he had spent many years in prison, and he was um, actually a source of inspiration to many in the younger generation because of his steadfastness and his dedication. And also Hugyal Qobadi, who was an electric engineer. He was also 33 years old, and he was executed today. Unfortunately, his cousin is currently on death row too, and his cousin is actually a one of the elite students of Iran, and he has been transferred along with 20 other prisoners to an undisclosed location, and we have fear that the Iranian regime is going to try to have him and another person who was part of their case all executed. So these are the circumstances that we have today in Iran.
No, I think, that situation is very, very difficult. But I cannot imagine what you guys have gone through. Me being from Venezuela, I have a sort of idea, not the same idea as the regime over there, but I'm not. I'm for human life. I'm not against taking it. And w- two things that you said there that impacted me were that you always had hope. You know, and that is an important thing in life to always have hope. Because if you don't, that's the moment when you fail. If we go through something, if the people of Iran or anybody else here listening to the podcast is going through something, if we give up hope, we gave everything. That's when we lost. The second thing is realizing that people have it worse than you. And that is something that I learned from myself. I didn't went through a regime or anything, but I went through surgeries. And I thought I was the only one in the world going through something. But once I realized that people were at worse things than me, that changed my perspective and realizing how lucky I am. Like you said, you had the chance to meet your father, and I'm sorry for your loss. You know, I hope that he rests in peace, right? But we all go through some things, but at least you got to meet your father. There are many things that a lot of people can't do. I'm fortunate enough to have my father, and I appreciate that every day. Because we don't get to do that every day. Give our parents a hug. You receive a call from your parents. It's not something that we have every day, and not all people in the world have it every day. So we have to appreciate the things that we have, and know that we are lucky to have those things. I don't know if you agree with that.
Completely agree. I think that there's a lot that we take for granted, and um, if we don't understand, how much we have, uh, then if we don't value it, then we don't see ourselves as change makers, because then you just feel like you're the victim here, and you're just stuck with whatever situation that you have. But in reality, we all can take matters into our own hands. Um, what's important is your resolve and your dedication, And if you're willing to pay a price for it, everything is possible if you're willing to pay a price for it. And that is something that we believe in. I mean, even right now with the situation, we can change things. We can prevent things from taking place. It just depends on how much effort we're willing to put into it and what a price we're willing to pay for it. And that is why we are the creators of our own destiny. And I think that's really important to understand, because even if you are at that point of rock bottom that you mentioned, if you understand that you have the potential and the capability to change that, then there's always hope and there's always a road forward. And there's no such thing as rock bottom. So you can, you know, turn things around, and you can be that agent of change.
Yeah, there's a quote that I really like that says the only time success becomes before work is in a dictionary. We have to be willing to put the work in. It's not gonna be granted to us simply by saying it. No, we have to go through the struggles. We have to put in the sacrifice of working every single day. You know, you did, I did, many people have done. They have put their sacrifice, and now they are in a great place, way better than they were before, right? So we have to realize that we have to put the work in order to get the results that we want. We're not going to get the results if we don't put the work in. And with that, I want to go into the next question. I think you sort of gave us this answer, but I just want to hit it again. What motivated you to go from, there are a lot of things happening, right? In Iran, many people are being killed, to be motivated to do something about it. What made you do that?
Well, for me, I guess I've always asked myself that question, like, what is your responsibility in face of all of everything that's happening? And this is something that I guess maybe it is the result of the upbringing that I had, but also having, role models in front of me, like my parents or others in the resistance, that I saw that they had decided to not give in, and they had decided to actually take matters into their own hands, and they saw themselves as responsible for things that, they really had no control over. Um, I saw their dedication and their steadfastness. And so that always the question in face of any issue was, what are you going to do about it? Or what is your responsibility? In putting that responsibility on your shoulders, it just changes the perspective on everything. So I grew up with that as a reality. I saw, the price that my parents paid. I mean, yes, you know, I think they were the greatest inspirations to me in my life, because they didn't teach me what's important in life with their words, but with their own actions, by putting their own lives before the lives of others, by standing for what they believe in and making the sacrifice, even if it meant their lives or sacrificing their family or whatnot. So um, I saw how my father was only 36 when he was killed by the regime, and he was a prominent writer and a human rights activist. He could have had a very easy and successful life in the US if he wanted to, but that's not the path that he chose. He decided to dedicate his life to freedom of Iran and to the people of Iran. And I saw my mom that, at the age of 25, she decided to join the Iranian resistance, and she has been continuously fighting for 38 years now. And that kind of dedication to put, your country before your own children, before your own life, before your own happiness, I think that is something that is remarkable. And I hold my head up high to have a mother like that. So I guess they taught me to always have that kind of outlook on issues. But for me, I guess the turning point, when I decided to join the resistance, was um, when I was 18. Was the summer after I had graduated from high school. There was the student uprisings in 1999, summer of 1999 in Iran, July 1999. And it was the first time after over a decade that there were, you know, nationwide uprisings in Iran. It was started by our generation. So it was the first time that our generation was coming to the scene, just, I guess, teenagers or people who were maybe a few years older than us in college, college students who were coming to the streets. And um, I thought to myself, are you going to be a bystander and just watch? Because it was the start of cable television and CNN and things. And so we were, for the first time, this was being broadcasted to the world. The world was seeing what was happening in Iran. And I remember it was one day, it was 5 a.m., I think, and I was watching these scenes from Iran, and I thought to myself, like, what are you doing? Is this what you want? Are you just going to be like watching from abroad and see like what happens? Or are you going to do something about it? Or are you going to do something for them? And so I decided to, I was going to go to college and study medicine, and I got a full scholarship and everything, but I decided to put that all aside, and I decided to join the Iranian resistance instead, because I remember running into an article a year before that and it said there were, at that time, there were 20,000 Iranian doctors in the US. Right now, the number is much, much more, um, probably like double or triple. But um, at that time, I figured, am I going to be one of those 20,000? Or am I going to be one of those who actually frees Iran so the people, these doctors could actually go and serve their own people? Because Iran, even today, has the largest brain drain in the world. So just imagine if these people could actually go and serve their own people. Um, and so that just changed, I guess, the path of my life. And I have been dedicated to this cause ever since. And yeah, it's it's um it's something that we are very dedicated to. And 120,000 people have been killed by this regime for choosing this path, for choosing to fight for freedom in Iran. Because of their political views and their beliefs, they have been executed by this regime. So, it has, a grave price has been paid for freedom in Iran. That is also why the people of Iran understand that no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter, and we have to pay that price. And the fight for freedom in Iran has actually, it's not limited to 47 years. It's like 120 years right now, since the 1906 constitutional revolution. The people of Iran, you know, fought against the previous dictatorship, the monarchy, and they were able to overthrow the monarchy with a popular uprising. But unfortunately, their revolution was hijacked by Khomeini. And unfortunately, it was replaced. A classical dictatorship was replaced with a religious dictatorship, which is worse. But that doesn't mean that the revolution that the people of Iran had was wrong. It was part of the path of overthrowing a dictatorship. But also, it doesn't mean that we are stuck between choosing between two types of dictatorships. The people of Iran want to move forward to a secular democratic republic in Iran, and they want to be able to build that future that they deserve.
Mm. Good, great answer. Great answer. I think I don't know like the extent that you have done, but I believe that purpose of helping people out there is something that we should all strive for. I think we are here on this earth to help each other, and I hope that in the future we are able to not only here in the U.S. to support Iran and do everything possible, but I hope that in the future there comes a point that Iran is free and you're able to help those people over there. And, because I believe I'm from Venezuela and you're from Iran, that both of those countries have great potential if we come together and, if those two countries do come better, the world is a better place with it, and thank you for, standing to evil. Thank you for standing for something that, a positive message to the people. I thank you for that. And I want to ask this question. What would you like your legacy to be?
think that the greatest legacy that I can hope for is a free Iran. But yeah, I think that, I mean, even being able to, like, those who have been killed in these past 2 days, knowing that, you know, to be able to sacrifice my life for the freedom of Iran, I think that would be like the greatest honor and the greatest um legacy and the greatest achievement that I could have in life. But to be able to see a true democracy flourish in Iran. You have to understand that in the last 100 years, we've had 2 years of a democratic government in Iran. And that was during Dr. Mossadegh's time. Dr. Mossadegh, he was the prime minister from 1951 to 1953. He was overthrown or taken out, actually, through a coup d'etat um, by the MI6 and CIA at that time, which reinstated the Shah and his full power, one party rule and the Savak and all those atrocities that were perpetrated by the Shah. So the people of Iran have been yearning for the dawn of freedom and a true democracy for decades now. And so if we can give that to the people of Iran that they so justly deserve, that would be the greatest accomplishment or legacy that I could hope for.
Great answer. You know, before we started recording the podcast, we were talking about like how we take things for granted. Right? We like both of us are able to live here in the US and we're able to, you know, speak freely and do the things that we love without being judged, you know, without being persecuted by the government. That is not something that, you know, everyone out there has. You know, the people in Iran, they're being executed for it, like you said. You know, in Venezuela, when you said something about the president, you know, you were gone. You know, they took you as a prisoner somewhere and they tortured you. So we have to be grateful for the things that we do have here in the US. We have the ability to, you know, to listen to these podcasts, listen to different perspectives into things that are happening outside in the world. That doesn't happen anywhere. So we have to be aware that we do have those things here and to be able to use them, you know, to be able to stand to something like you have done. I hope to do that in my future too. Stand for something bigger than myself, something that, you know, drive people closer, not farther apart. So we have to be grateful for those things that we do have that make us unique and that give us the power to stand to something bigger than ourselves.
Completely.
Okay, so before we end the podcast, can you please tell the audience where they can find you, where they can follow you?
Yes, if you would like to learn more about the resistance in general, you could visit the ncr-iran.org. Or if you would like to learn more about Maryam Rajavi, who is the president-elect of this resistance. And she is like the greatest inspiration that I've had in my life. But she is also leading this movement for 40 years now. And she is an extraordinary woman who anyone who comes across her is really touched um, by her message, by her presence, and by her resilience. And you can learn more about her from on the website mariam-rajavi.com or mariamrajaviforchange.com. I'll provide you all of those so you could have it in the show notes. And if you would like to reach out to me directly, I'm available on X and Instagram and LinkedIn if you search my name, Zolan Habibi. And yeah, if you would like to become active for Iran during these very critical times, if you're in the US, you can reach out to oiac.org. That's the Organization of Iranian American Communities. Or if you're in any other country, you can reach out to iranfreedom.org and they will put you in contact with local chapters. It is a very critical time, but we can all make a difference and we could all um, stand by the people of Iran in these very difficult times. And first and foremost, the first step that everyone can take, no matter who you are, where you are, is ask your foreign ministries, um, your, you know, State Department or whatever that you have in your country, to condemn this wave of executions and stand for the lives who are being, taken away by this regime, and support the Iranian people in their fight for freedom in Iran, for a secular democratic republic in Iran, and for putting an end to all forms of tyranny, be it crowned or turbaned. Um, it is time to move on to a secular democratic republic in Iran.
Perfect. Please, I will put those links down in the description of the video so that people can follow you, sign up for being an activist for the people of Iran. I will leave those all those links down in the description for you guys to follow. And thank you so much, Sola, for being here, for coming into the podcast and speaking freely about all those things. I will guess that those are things that are difficult to speak on, but you have been very grateful for sharing your information with us today. And with that, I want to thank the audience for being here and listening to the podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment here in the video and share with the people that you love so that we can keep spreading the message and keep spreading the message that there's hope in the world and that it's going to be a better future for this world. Thank you so much again for being here. And I hope that you guys all take care. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care.